South China Morning Post, 31st of October 2022, China practices weaponized interdependence, which is a result of the consequences of Russia's war in Ukraine. The most significant power outages in recent memory currently occur across Western Europe. For a generation, households, companies, and schools in Europe West have enjoyed reliable energy supplies. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the subsequent events put an end to that and reopened the topic of greater reliance on rival countries like China, prompting some countries to reconsider the type of globalization they had been engaging in for the previous 2 decades. Fast forward to 2022, and regrettably, the prophecy has come true for the Europeans. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, issued a foreboding warning in 2017 on Germany's choice to proceed with the Nord Stream 2 project and the dangers it posed. The German delegation to the UN was discovered chuckling at his remarks. Along with the power outages, Europe's climate change ambitions are now under scrutiny. As energy prices rise, nations may reconsider their commitment to clean energy and turn more heavily to non-renewable sources like coal, as Germany has recently done. This teaches us about how interdependence may be weaponized. Even before the Ukraine crisis, few Western nations were aware of the dangers posed by growing dependency. China has weaponized the interdependence of its trading partners, as evidenced by Australia's experience with its act of economic coercion, which involved tariffs and bans on beef, barley, and wine, and South Korea's similar experience with China as a result of its deployment of the THAAD missile system. However, the rest of the world is also learning from its mistakes. States in the Global South have become aware of the risks posed by countries at the top of the network of value chains, as scholars Henry Farrell and Abraham Newman of Georgetown University highlighted in their paper Weaponized Interdependence, How Global Economic Networks Shape State Coercion, while many Western nations and Asian nations, including India, are rethinking their relationship with Russia, China, or both. States that have been subject to economic sanctions are especially eager to take action to stop reliance from becoming a weapon. For instance, Iran and Russia are considerably ahead of their Western counterparts. Iran, a frequent target of economic sanctions, could continue dealing with other countries for several years by getting around the SWIFT system. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has consistently advocated for removing the US dollar as the primary reserve currency and has raised other currencies and commodities reserves. It is also impossible to dismiss initiatives like Made in China 2025 in Beijing and Atmanirbhar Bharat, or a self-reliant India, as merely import substitution schemes. Since Western economic sanctions have disproportionately affected China and India, none of these 2 major Asian economies wants to depend on the West for their technical or economic development. Additionally, India seeks to halt imports from China and wants to stop all imports from China. Beijing has even more motivation to become self-sufficient and stop depending on help from the United States or any hostile country, thanks to the export control measures implemented by the Biden administration to stop China's technological piracy and breakthrough technologies. Similar penalties were imposed on India for its nuclear testing in 1998. The country's desire for self-sufficiency and its foreign minister's transformation into a supporter of multipolarity are both motivated by the same reasons that China and Russia do. These worries are shared by the BRICS alliance, which has recently discussed energy security, commodities, and the dominance of the US dollar. China, a lawless country, is attempting to demonstrate that it is comparable to India, a democratic government that upholds the rule of law. Furthermore, nations like Saudi Arabia that disagree with Washington on policy are reconsidering their reliance on the US for defense, various goods, and support on the international stage. A recent attempt by Riyadh to join the BRICS alliance and welcome Chinese investment into the nation serves as a case in point. The weaponization of interdependence by Russia may prompt other economies to reconsider boosting commercial ties with countries like China that pose a danger to their national security. States like Germany, however, might not view China as a sufficient adversary to fear the weaponization of interdependence and, as a result, may not be interested in reducing their interconnectivity to the Chinese economy if the US were to deepen its deglobalization from China. Germany, like China, depends heavily on globalization, expecting the Chinese market to compensate for the absence of the Russian market. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz stated in response to inquiries about his upcoming trip to Beijing that the EU prides itself on being a union interested in global trade, and it does not side with those who promote deglobalization in light of the Chinese shipping company COSCO's attempt to acquire a stake in the Hamburg port. If Scholz's statements are any indication, treaty alliances will not override trade interests or concerns about the militarization of interdependence, notwithstanding differences among various EU leaders on China policy. Germany might wait to support the US until it views China's connectivity as a danger to national security. Increased interconnection was intended as a prescription for peace, acting as an antidote to the conflict between Russia and the United States. With the Ukraine conflict and rising US-China rivalry, countries are starting to understand the difficulties of relying on rival states and reducing their ties to those considered the next opponent, like China. Because of the possibility of weaponizing interdependence as the globe evolves toward multipolarity, economies might not want a small number of countries dominating the value chains of critical industries, as China has done for the previous 20 years. As a result, the drive of diversification will result in increased value chain fragmentation, or globalization 0.5. Outside of China,